Bars for brands.
Voice Junkie.
A podcast for nerds, unapologetic truths that are put in these words.
Voice Junkie.
A place to talk sports, politics, and pop culture. See who's holding the torch.
Voice Junkie.
Who's saying the best? None other than the protagonist, Mr. Chuck West.
Voice Junkie.
Now tune in and listen. The trendaholics in full effect and giving you wisdom.
I believe when it comes to acting and people sticking with those roles that they're categorized as, I believe Bishop was the one. Tupac.
What they saying?
Like I believe both of you guys know Tupac. I've never met Tupac, right? Before or after.
Well, you're trying to say that people said he became
1,000,000%. I know everybody.
We heard it because Daddy Rich was in Juice with them and saw the transformation from when we were on tour. Like Tupac used to come in my hotel.
There's no Digital Underground.
Yeah, he was with Digital.
He was dancing.
He sure as hell did.
He would freestyle.
He
knew he had a production.
Absolutely.
So like Tupac's trying to get a deal. He's trying to spit like, what do you think? What do you think? I'm like, it's all right, you know.
And you're up third base at this time?
We're third base,
okay.
And he's actually walking up to Rich and saying, "Yo, Rich, can I help you carry your cases? You need any help?" Yo, we bought him Whoppers,
That's
Pizza
wild,
Hut,
man.
everything.
He was such a good dude, though. Like, he was good dude. Like, and we would be on the road, and you know, Shock G, may rest in peace, and me. Like, he would just play the keys, and we would freestyle damn near all night, just off the top of our head about how much we loved each other, how much we loved where we were at, how much we loved how we were moving, you know, and it was just, it was family.
Right.
You know, it was really like a family. Like, you know, we'd play pool with Queen Latifah and Moni, or we'd work out with this one. It's really family.
But isn't that kind of the moral of this whole story, is that back then it was like a small community and doing certain things would kind of exile you from that community.
Right, but back to what he's saying. So Tupac we went to a conversation, told me about his mom, and I see that he had like these friendship bracelets and like a silver bracelet and just like a little silver chain with a little silver medallion. He's like, you never wear gold. Tells the whole story about the gold trade. And so he's in Juice. Rich reports back to us like, I think Tupac thinks he's this character.
Like he's seen him turn into the character.
He saw it right in front of his face. So
wow.
we do this show in, I think it was a Gavin at the Townsend. And we walked to the side stage, and who's standing there in the corner with this big dookie cable on with this big huge gold medallion.
Oh, this is Death Row Tupac now? Or
No, this is way before.
Okay.
And like,
This is Brenda Got a Baby.
Okay, Brenda Got a Baby.
I'll let you hear me, Tupac.
Yo, we clowned him, and he was like, he was pissed, man. He was like, we were like, yo, what happened?
Yo, what happened with the gold, homie? Yo, why you got that gold on, homie?
Yeah.
You looking like, you know, you got that slave mentality, homie. He's like, yeah, why you doing
But
me
he was
like that?
mad young too, and you know,
But that's the whole thing.
That's what he
like,
said that
yo, bro, like
represented.
at the end of the day, like, we were all young.
They just broke down another story that I never heard, and this is coming from Third Base. Now, Third Base, if you don't understand shit about shit when it comes to hip hop, is one of the first type of real successful groups in the game when it came to the genre hip hop that, you know, wasn't even around. Like when you hear more of the interview with Nori on Drink Champs, he gets into how, you know, the start of hip hop and all of that, how, you know, like the first 10 years of it was just, it wasn't even classified as anything. It was just a vibe. Like people just did things and partied and did all the elements. It was just really, really a culture thing. It didn't have a title. It didn't have a slogan so it can be sold out and commercialized. That came later on in the mid 80s when it, you know, of course, corporate America got their greedy, nasty hands on it. And converted the culture that was nameless into a name that could be sold. So, you know, it was interesting when they got into all of those things. But I had to play this clip because, yes, this is an interesting clip. This is another story that I've heard about Tupac playing a character, essentially. Being a cosplayer, essentially. I remember an old story. I believe Lil C said it or whatever. It was a story, I guess, or something that Big said to him in confidence, and he said something along the lines of, I guess Big ran into Pac. I guess they were crossing paths or something. I don't know if it was at an award show or whatever. And this was later on, of course. This is when Pac is on death row, and Big is like, "Hey man, what the fuck is going on with you? Why are you doing this?" You know, and I think, you know, I'm not remembering correctly, but he says something on the lines of, "Hey, you know, it's not really personal. It's just business. And this is who Pac was essentially. He did whatever it took to get on top. He was, he came from humble beginnings like we all did, but he was a very, very aspirational motherfucker. He did whatever it took to be noticed, to be to have eyes drawn to him. And back to third base, back to Pete Nice, who really was trying to get his shit off. I really wished in the interview they would have let him speak a little bit more on this section, because he was really, uncovering some stuff about Pac that a lot of the masses seem to ignore or just don't know about, because it's just, not widely, people only understand one version of Pac. They understand a couple versions of Pac. They understand the party version, I get around. They understand the more introspective version, Brenda's Got a Baby, Dear Mama, and then they see their favorite version that everybody knows best, Thug Life version, Death Row version, America's Most Wanted, All Eyes on Me, all of those versions. That's Tupac Thug Life. That's the version that he's most infamous of. That is the cosplay version of who he really is. That's what I've said from day one, because I've listened to the cats who've been there from the beginning. And this is just another example of the opinion and the thoughts that I've had for over 20 years about Tupac. I knew from day one who he was. Listen, I was there too. I was a young buck in the early 90s, but I was there as well. The dude is who he is. He started off one way, and then when Juice came out, he literally became Bishop. Literally. I think in the end, Pac was always a very talented performer. And I think my whole purpose is, when it comes to Pac is an all-time talented performer when it came to, all aspects of performing arts. People forget, a lot of street motherfuckers who worship Tupac forget that he was a performing arts maven. He was going to Juilliard, the performing arts in New York City. And if you don't know shit about shit when it comes to Juilliard, you gotta be very, very special to get into that school. Meaning, whatever you was sought out into doing or being, whether it was a dancer or a performer, and you got into that school, that means you was cream of the crop. That means you are talented enough to take a character like Bishop and morph it into Thug Life. You are very talented. You are talented enough to do it. And that's what I think he did from day one. And all Pete Nice was trying to do was uncover that knowledge to people. And he said, DJ Rich, he was there. He could definitely talk more in depth about it, because he watched the transformation in front of his eyes, because he was on the goddamn set of the movie. He's saying this to Nori and EFN, and they trying to skirt around it, of course, because they just trying to keep good face for Pac, because again, everybody loves Pac. It's like sacrilegious to even question anything about Tupac. But the reality is the reality. Dude was an excellent performer. And it got me thinking, like, man, was Tupac the first Drake? Think about it. He might have been the first Drake. Excellent performers. Both of them. Excellent performers. Drake came from Degrassi, the TV show. Before then, he was a very, huge fan of Michael Jackson. He was always destined to be a star in a sense of being in front of a camera. You had early stage Drake, goofy Drake, who made excellent, awesome hits about heartbreak and all these other things. And then as he became more and more successful, he turned into Mafioso Drake. And Mafioso Drake, Mob Life Drake, or that's Tupac. That's thug life. That's Death Row Tupac. So, there was evolutions of Pac as well. Digital Underground, then Juice, and then later on, the iconic figure that he became as the Thug Life character. All of them were characters. That's why I scoff at the notion that we're supposed to worship Tupac as this all-time great MC, that he lived it, man, does this, that, and the third. It's like, no, he is a sad case of someone who became the character that they sought out to play. It's a role that got away from him. Think about it. It's no different than a professional wrestler who loses touch with themselves. There is stories of that, where very successful wrestlers who become the character. They're no longer who they grew up as, or whoever is on their goddamn social security card anymore. They are the character now. They live it. Hulk Hogan is one. So there is stories of that. Vince McMahon, another one. And that's in one of my other episodes when I broke down the Vince McMahon story and how he's a sad case of the same thing that I'm talking about with Tupac. These are people at one point in their lives who was, one version of themselves. And then for whatever reason, something clicked and then they moved into a different direction and became they're both performers, but they all became the characters that they, grew larger than life. And that's what Pac was, man. Tupac is a larger than life character. So that's what I think about Pac. And I don't look at Pac the musician necessarily. Not saying that he didn't make excellent records. Hell, I bought All Eyes on Me. I still have it to this day. It's not about that. It's about categorizing people and putting them in their proper slots. That's how I've always been. Just like when I wrote my article about Drake in 2017 saying that stop calling him a rapper. He's a pop artist. I said this then, before we got to all of this. Because I knew then, I identified at the time who he was, where he came from, and where, now where he ultimately, started to go. Because even in 2017, he wasn't all the way morphed into mafioso Drake yet. But I seen it then. Because I knew it. I was like, yo, the dude is a performer, man. That's what he doing. He performing. You think this is all real? It's not. Believe this shit if you want. Believe your lying eyes if you want. These guys, hey man, they see the pathway, and if they got to play a character and to make millions and millions of dollars and get all the attention that they seek, especially coming from meager beginnings, hey man, some people will do it. Some people will sell their soul enough to do it. And hey, if you're going to have millions and masses of people, generations of people, in Tupac's case, believing narratives and believing a certain image of who you were and who you are as a person, then yeah, maybe the riches is worth, all the fuckery in the beginning. But I thought it was fascinating to share that clip because I never heard this story. And here's another person, another MC, another foundational piece of hip hop. Third Base is that MC Search as well. I didn't shout him out, along with Pete Nice, who is a part of the Hip Hop Foundation, the Hip Hop Museum that is constructed out in New York City. He's a part of that. He's on the board. He's a pivotal figure in the history of the genre and the culture. So you can't call bullshit on him if it's coming from him. And that's where he's saying, hey, my man said he's seen the transformation because he was in the goddamn movie. He seen Pac. I was on tour with him when we was buying him pizzas and shit. And he was a good kid trying to get into the business like everybody else. hey, I'll grab your bags. I'll do what it takes to get on top. Whatever it takes. And a lot of people started that way. No shot to him. But what Pac realized is like, yo, hey, I got this fucking moment. Nobody really got paid on that movie Juice. You know, we heard what Omar Epps said. You know, I heard what he said. I think Omar Epps said he got paid like a few $1,000s or something like that. So Pac did probably get paid that much more. And Pac had to fucking audition for the role. And by God, he killed it and he did so well with the role that he later became the fucking role. It was the blueprint to Thug Life Pac. That's how fucking much he knocked it out of the park. So Pac knew then, like, yo, this is a fucking opportunity. I came to New York City to Juilliard for this opportunity here. And by God, if this is my last opportunity, I'm going to hit it out the park. And he did. And he turned that part into a career that later killed him, sadly. So yeah, just a fascinating rabbit hole thought to think about for all you Pac fans out there. Tell me what
Shotty's got to be the head coach to bring him back to at least win that division.
I'm going to push back a little bit on both you guys. Listen, I wish Shotty well. I know him a little bit. I think he's a long time, really good football coach. He's never been a head football coach, right? And he hasn't interviewed for a head coaching job in a long time. And to think about how this entire process went down, it makes me question if the Dallas Cowboys are even serious about winning. Listen to the group they interviewed. I mean, they interviewed Kellen Moore, Robert Saleh, Leslie Frazier, and Brian Schottenheimer. Right? You didn't even take a look at the most promising candidates out there. You haven't been to an NFC championship game since 1995. That is the worst in the conference by a long shot.
Yep.
Next is the Bears, and it was 2010. So by all measures, from a postseason success standpoint, you are the worst team in the conference, right? And you just made this, the entire thing is bizarre and doesn't make sense. Again, I like Shotty. Is this an upgrade over Mike McCarthy? Like, Mike McCarthy brought him in.
He's going to have to learn as a first-time head coach. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Alex, but absolutely. I mean, I know that's going to be some type. There's obviously going to be growing pains with him being the head coach, and does that cost him 1 or 2 games? It could.
There's an irony in this. 30 years.
They've been conditioned to this. You get drafted into that organization. This is all you know. Jerry's the boss at everything. And I think now, right, like he's putting this staff together is what it seems like. Again, nothing against Shotty, but he didn't even look at all these coaching candidates out there that were so promising. This was last minute, like all his negotiations this entire year.
But didn't you say Jerry likes to do things his way, and he likes to see things and identify things that others didn't? Many thought the Dallas Cowboys wouldn't have been a good investment. He did. Many thought many of the marketing deals he did weren't good ideas. He did. He likes to do things his way. He's identified this guy. And by the way, like there's some great track record of teams hiring head coaches when they fire 7 or 8 of them every single year. So he's identified this guy that he believes where some coordinators are great head coaches, some coordinators are not great head coaches.
He has not been to an NFC championship game since 1995. You're just going to keep doing the same thing. And again, I come back to, are you serious about winning? Or is it just about ticket sales and being the most valuable franchise in the world? Right? What is more important?
I mean, what more evidence do we need to see when it comes to Jerry Jones? Gerald Wayne Jones. It's obvious. The media knows. They're up to his stupid ways, man. The media is on to it. They've caught on. Finally, they've caught on. They've caught on to the charade that Jerry's been running for the last decade. Mike Florio was another one who was on top of it to start the season. Before the season began, when Jerry claimed he was all in, when he lied about that. Mike Florio said the same things that Alex Smith just said. Are you serious about winning? Because your actions don't prove it, Gerald. It doesn't prove it. People aren't stupid. You're not going to keep continuing pulling the wool over people's heads, thinking that, they're going to keep falling for the same tricks. They're not falling for the same tricks anymore. It's obvious. You clearly don't give a shit about winning. And you haven't gave a shit about winning for quite some time, Jerry. It's obvious now. The jig is up. You've figured out a way. I've said this. I've said this on my platforms numerous times. I'm not saying anything differently that these guys haven't already said. Actually, I was saying this stuff a lot sooner than a lot of these guys on the media stations have been saying it, that he don't give a shit about winning. It's obvious. It has been obvious for several years now because of the decisions he makes. Everybody says it. Even Adam Schefter trying to, give Jerry some bail so he can keep the access to Jerry, of course. Hey, he's just being a journalist, quote unquote. So, he got to keep his access. So, he had to be the one to provide the contrarian thought just to give it some kind of quote unquote perspective. But everybody at that table know what's going on and knows what's been going on. Jerry doesn't care about winning. He figured out a way to be successful without winning. So whether we lose, he wins. When we win, he wins. When we lose, he wins. He never loses. He's the house. He's like the casino. House rules when it comes to Jerry. So of course he's going to interview all these puppets. That's all it was. That whole list of guys that Alex Smith named were puppets. All of them. I didn't even know that Schottenheimer was our offensive coordinator. I had no idea he was the OC for the last 2 years. That's what tells you how insignificant he is. Because he really wasn't OC and shit. It was Mike calling the plays. He was only in that position because Mike got rid of Kellen Moore. Remember that? Nobody freaking remembers anything anymore. Nobody, it seems like. Nobody in Valley Ranch. And when I mean nobody, it's really Jerry. Jerry, man, is playing a game by himself. These is rich people games. I said this in a video that I cut a couple weeks ago on YouTube at the Chuck West World channel. What I told people, I told everybody, I said, hey, this is Al Davis reincarnated. It's in front of our very eyes. We've seen this movie before. People who've paid attention to football and the way it's operated, the way it's ran by, folks in the front office, ownership. We've seen this movie. And it was Al Davis. And that movie didn't end well. It ended with his team cratering into mediocrity and him partially losing some of his credibility as a businessman and as an NFL owner, because he was one of the first. And it just didn't, it started great for him when he joined the league, and it ended very badly for him when he later died with power. And that's what's happening with Jerry Jones. This is like Succession, obviously. If you've seen the show Succession on HBO, you had an overbearing father, a titan of industry in Logan Roy, who controlled his media empire. And he had all his, his kids around that were waiting for him to cede power. And he never did. He had to, die in order for things to be shook up. And it's no different here with the Dallas Cowboys. I've come to that realization long time ago. I put up the Dallas Cowboy hats and all the freaking paraphernalia, or whatever you want to call it, merchandise. It's been hanging up, or it's been collecting dust on top of my shelf, like my fitted hat has been for the whole year. And it'll probably sit up there for longer and collect more dust as I miserably track the NFC Championship score. It's just ridiculous, man. This old man is holding a generation hostage. It's insane. Just like Michael Irvin, I listened to some of his thoughts. He was talking about it's 40 years in a generation. People don't realize that. 40 years is a generation. We haven't been to an NFC Championship in 30 of those years. So if you fall outside that 30 years, or you fall under that 30 years, you have no fucking idea what winning looks like. That is embarrassing. And it's all because of one man, Jerry Jones. I fall right outside of that 30-year mark because I was the start of a new generation. I was 10 years old 30 years ago. So I was fortunate enough, lucky enough to have seen the glory years and seen how great it was when there was actual structure in place, stability, a culture. We ain't seen a culture in 30 years. Now, granted, to be fair, Bill Parcells tried to do that. And he did. Until he couldn't take it anymore and he hauled ass himself after 3 seasons. Because Jerry couldn't help himself when it came to the meddling. The dude just doesn't care about winning. It's obvious. It's a farce, and there's no one to blame anymore. We all know what Jerry is. He's showed his face a million times now. He's revealed himself. He's the Scooby-Doo villain. He just keeps pulling the bag off his face, and it keeps revealing himself. Jerry Jones, Jerry Jones, Jerry Jones. And how long are we going to allow this crazy old man to hold us hostage? I stopped that last year, and I hope you guys who are fans listening to this segment will follow suit. That's the only way this old man will listen to anything, is if them seats become a little more emptier. That's an embarrassment to him. He's a showman. He's a circus freak. He's a carny. That's who he is. He's Barnum and Bailey. So this is what we are faced with right now. We just have to just live with it. And this guy is a Sith Lord. Who knows? He might outlive us all. The fact, even though he's in his 80s, he still might outlive us all. Who knows? So yeah, this is just another embarrassing mark on an already embarrassing team. I have no expectations heading into this season, like I had none going into this past season. You hired a more vanilla, more less respected. I don't even want to compare him to Mike McCarthy. That's a disrespect to Mike McCarthy. He repaired Mike McCarthy's image, leaving. Like now, I was like, I was like, great, he's gone. But then now Jerry done made Mike McCarthy look good on the way out the door. Hell, if I was Mike, I would have left too. This is a circus show that has no end in sight. I wouldn't be nowhere near it. You couldn't pay me to be near this shit show.